Welcome back to the Combat Sports Media YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to talk about, break down, and give out a prediction for the Emanuel Navarrete versus Oscar Valdez rematch. It's going to take place on December 7th in Phoenix, Arizona. It will be televised live on ESPN and ESPN Plus, I believe. Now, before I go any further, I would just like to talk about how bad of a job ESPN has been doing for broadcasting the sport of boxing since acquiring the top-ranked product. I believe they treat it as filler content. For example, this broadcast is scheduled to air at 10:30 or 10:30 at night, but we all know the main event is going to air anywhere from 12 at night in Eastern to anywhere to 2 a.m. And that's just completely unacceptable. How are you supposed to acquire new fans and grow the sport when all the good matchups and the main events air at 12 o'clock at night? 11:30 the earliest Eastern time, earliest. Usually they're on, like I said, anywhere from 12 to 2 a.m., and that's no lie, no exaggeration. So I don't like the way ESPN has been treating and broadcasting the sport of boxing since acquiring the top-ranked product. Before, when they used to do the Friday night fights or what have you, with Teddy Atlas, I believe they used to do a much better job than they are now. I remember those main events used to come on. First of all, it was very consistent schedule. It was on Fridays, same time, same network, like kind of exactly like a show, where you can expect it to be on this channel at this time on this day. And the matchups were a lot of times, especially the main events, important, meaning that it meant something if the winner won and the loser lost. The matches had consequences. So it was an interesting product. And not to mention, they did get some big names to fight on the platform as well. Names like, Lamont Peterson, Sugar Shane Mosley, Vladimir Klitschko. These are all fighters that had fights on the ESPN platform way before this top rank thing came about. Back when ESPN used to do a good job. Anyway, enough about that. So, Emanuel Navarrete, this guy is a beast. This guy is a savage. He has an awkward style. He's huge for the weight class. This is on the 130-pound weight class. I believe he's about 5'8", 5'9". He walks around maybe 160, something like that. Maybe even higher. And he's not a powerful puncher, but he's a heavy puncher. And he doesn't throw many combinations, but he's constantly throwing the jab. He uses the jab very well. And he has a good 1-2. And he has underrated athleticism and feet. And he's good at jabbing and stepping back. Usually things like that aren't associated with Navarrete, but I believe he does a very good job at stuff like that. And he has underrated feet. He's got good feet. He's not what we call a zombie fighter, or he doesn't have what we call cement feet. you know. He can be fleet-footed when he wants to be. So, and he also has the ability, he doesn't throw combinations often, but he has the ability to constantly be throwing. You know, he could overwhelm you with activity, even though he's not a big combination guy. He's got great conditioning, historically speaking, traditionally speaking, even though lately he's shown some kinks in that area. He's smart. I think he's got a good IQ. And I would have to categorize him as a brawler. At first, when he was in the lighter weight classes, he was more of a volume guy. But now, since he's gone up in weight, lately he's been more of a brawler. He throws less punches, and he's more on power. You know what I mean? But still very awkward. Uses the jab very well, throws it often, and he has a nice uppercut that he uses on the inside and outside. We usually associate the uppercut with a punch that used on the inside, but this guy sometimes will just lead with the uppercut out of nowhere. So that's what I'm talking about when I say high IQ and being creative and stuff like that, and having underrated athleticism. That's stuff that's associated with fighters like Roy Jones, but this guy Navarrete does stuff like that. So very fun fighter to watch, athletic fighter. He's got good feet, uses the jab very well, and that's all I gotta say about this guy. And he's a savage, you know, and he's got good conditioning. So let's move on to Oscar Valdez. Oscar is a former Mexican Olympian. Back when he was younger, he reminded me of Amir Khan in the sense that he was a boxer that threw a lot of combinations and utilized the ring pretty well, and he had fast hands, much like Amir Khan. However, like Amir Khan, all his punches were like the same speed. You know what I mean? And the thing with that is it doesn't matter how fast you are, if all your punches are the same speed. If you're fighting a C-level fighter or above, after the second or third round, they're going to start getting used to it. And once they get used to it, that's no longer an advantage. So, you know, just because you have when you have a Ferrari, you got to know how to drive it. You know what I mean? You got a speed advantage, you got to know how to use it. Speed ain't shit if you don't know how to use it. Roger Mayweather used to say that. So anyway, but since he used to be trained by Manny Robles, but since transitioning to Canelo's trainer, Eddie Reynoso, who he's been with for a few years already. It's been quite some time already. But since making that transition, he's been sitting down more on his punches, and he's been throwing less combinations and focusing more on power, and basically fighting a little more like Canelo, basically, you know. And in the first fight, we did see Oscar catch Navarrete with some big shots, but the thing is, he never was able to successfully follow up with another big shot after landing the big shot. So, yeah. Now, moving on to the prediction, I have to go with Navarrete. And I believe if this was at 126, it would have helped out Oscar. But this is at 130. Oscar looked undersized. against Navarrete in the last fight, he just had problems reaching him, you know, especially because Navarrete is great at utilizing that jab. Now, I expect Navarrete to do the same thing in this fight, utilize that jab, maybe even more so in this fight. And I believe, I expect a similar fight to the first one. I don't think there's anything different that Oscar can do that he didn't do in the first fight. I mean, I don't see, I don't know. I expect a very similar fight to the first one. It will be competitive in some parts, but at the end of the day, it will be a clear decision win for Emanuel Navarrete. He's too good and too big. That's it. But I don't expect him to stop Oscar because Oscar is so tough. I still remember that Scott Quigg fight when in Carson, California, I believe. It was on ESPN, and it was raining, and there was only a few people at the fight, but the fight itself was very exciting, and he had his jaw broken by Scott Quigg in like the beginning of the fight, and he just bit down and kept going and won that fight in exciting fashion. And on top of that, Scott Quigg already had a big weight advantage coming in because he blew the weight, didn't even bother making it or what have you. So I have all the respect for Oscar. He's a straight warrior. And because of that, I expect him to put in a good effort like he always does. And I expect him to go to full distance because of who he is. But again, I just think he's biting off a little bit too much, more than he could chew. And I expect a similar fight and outcome to their first one. Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you for tuning in as always. And I'll see you guys soon.